Welcome to Becoming an Ayn Rand Hero, where we explore how to apply the ideas of Ayn Rand in our daily life to create a life and a lifestyle with the qualities of an Ayn Rand hero. This episode is the third in a series of conversations with Executive Coach Kim Sawyer of thewealthsource.com about what it would look like to have a rational spirituality. Again, welcome back, Kim. Yes, exciting fun.
Hi, Mark. Good to be here.
All right. So we have been exploring this idea that we're putting under the term rational spirituality. You could call it a lot of things, but it's this bold, perhaps unconventional idea that not only can spirituality be approached from a rational perspective, such that you can actually describe its nature in such a way that you can optimize it, that we must approach it rationally because it is reality. And if we want to develop it, then we must understand it such that we can work with it in the way to develop it, in the way that we do with everything else that we want to get good at. If we want to build a bridge, we study the materials, we study engineering. If we want to be good in relationships, we study communication, we study needs and boundaries and how, right? And if we want to be good at spirituality, then we must approach it rationally.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think of spirituality as sort of meta-epistemology lately that came up in my thought process, much as teleology is meta-ethics. You know, you got to, in order to build a science around consciousness, awareness, and thinking, you have to understand what consciousness is and what we do with it. And just like you have, in order to be able to set principles and values and ethical systems, you have to understand what values are and why we have them and what to do with them. So that's kind of where I'm coming to. If I wanted to talk to someone who wasn't spiritual in any way, who was an objectivist or an atheist and an open-minded philosopher, I would probably come to them with spirituality is another name for meta-epistemology.
Sure. And in, you could say, our last two conversations, this is our third conversation officially on the channel around this. This is the third in a series. We've established a couple things. Now, one of them is, well, so what is this spirit thing? What is spirit? What is spirituality? So I want to call back some things we've said to represence them, clarify them, make sure we're still on the same page about them, and then continue forward. So one, there's this idea of a self. And self-realization or self-development or spiritual development, spiritual realization. The question is, what is that? Well, if you want to develop consciousness, you have to understand what consciousness is. If you want to develop the self, if you want to be self-interested in the highest sense of the term, the question is, what is this self? And how does spirituality play into this? And one of the things you were saying, and again, I'm going to propose it, you correct and verify to make sure we're on the same page, is that fundamentally there is a power to the universe as a whole, all of the energy, all of the creativity, all of the matter of the universe as a whole is, for lack of a better term, bigger than you. Right? Perhaps it's higher than you. It is more full than you. And that you can build a relationship to that, or you can claim and develop a relationship to that totality, which is one of move through me. You are bigger than me. I am going to align myself with you. I am going to align myself with reality and allow all of that energy to move through me so that I can be in flow, such that I can expand myself into that greater place. And that totality of the universe, of energy of creativity. We could call that, for lack of a better term, God,
Mm-hmm.
or divinity, or reality.
And by the way, it isn't beyond me. I'm part of it. I'm included in it. And that's an important thing to remember, is there's not self and then reality that's bigger than me and full of information and power that I want and need and can't control, but can use. But I'm also part of it, an irreplaceable part of it, if very finite, with some very powerful capabilities that very few other things in reality have.
Yes. Nice. You know, there's the thing that we are stardust, that literally we are supernovas, that stars collapsed in on themselves and formed the elements and blew them out and all of that came together onto Earth, and we're actually built of that which causes the universe to exist. I like to say that causes and maintains the universe to exist in its form with all of its natural laws, the laws of physics, and like whatever that is, I's made of that.
Yes.
Like that, like I is that. I am not other than that, and it is greater than whatever I understand myself to be right now. Because my understanding of myself is only as deep as I am. And the universe is much bigger than that.
Right. And so I wouldn't say I is that. I would say I am of it.
Great. I think mine's more fun. Yours is probably more technically correct.
Well, and you know what? That's an interesting distinction between us. We start at the same place, but you kind of go from the fun side, and I'm a little bit more on the, don't know what to call it. But yeah, it's a different approach.
Fair enough. And so in this, if that is, you could say spirit or God or divinity, you could say there's the I. What is the I in relation to that? And we discussed, one way of thinking about it is that we could imagine a spectrum where on one side of the spectrum you are unconscious and habitual and automatic. Like life happens, you wake up, you're in a story, you've got your projects, you've got your relationships, and all you do is navigate that. Just whatever comes up, you just deal with it, and you're completely unconscious. You're actually not choosing how you relate to everything. It's already decided for you, and you just play it out. That's one side of the spectrum.
Yes.
And then you can actually become increasingly conscious and aware of the fact that, hey, wait a minute, no. Like experience is happening. Existence is happening. I am aware of it, and I can choose how I relate to it.
Yes. And I want to say this. The people who deny volition,
yes,
the people whom Ayn Rand fought so vehemently and valiantly, who claim that there really is no choice and it can all be predicted forward from past data and experiences, what it is I'm going to choose, and ultimately there's no choice. I don't think that they were describing reality. I think they were describing themselves. And I think truly left to my own devices as a human being, without even realizing it, I have no volition. I have a brain full of programmed experiences that are spinning continual thoughts and emotions that I am listening to and thinking are telling me the truth about reality, and I continue to act and decide within that little microcosm of past experience. So to that extent, I can look back from my beginning and see exactly why I got to this point, reacted to that this way, and made this choice, unless I choose to step aside from that and have volition. The potential for volition is there, but I have to actually claim it and use it. Otherwise, I will naturally, as a human being. So those philosophers who are denying volition were busy looking at the majority of the human race, and all the evidence inside themselves and all around them was people are just driven by what's inside them and their reaction to what's around them. There's no choice. But that was more of a statement about how people are happening to operate and live rather than our true nature as human beings.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. As someone who has spent far too much time examining these arguments and reading these treatises, I will steelman them a little bit more to say, right?
Please.
Again, fundamentally, I'm with you. To say that all the choices that I make are a function of the choices I perceive.
Okay.
You know, I like to summarize that by saying that you can't make a choice that you don't perceive.
Okay.
Right? And you only perceive things that you have paid attention to enough in order to differentiate A from B.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's anything that you're good at. I like to use guitar as an example. Even just listening to guitarists, because I play guitar and because I've studied guitarists, I can tell the difference between one guitar player and another. Like if there's a solo being played, I can go, oh, that's Steve Vai, or oh, that's Eric Johnson, or oh, that's Joe Satriani, right? I can hear the actual style of the playing and differentiate them. Whereas other people have not developed that capacity to differentiate. And so they could not say, oh, I recognize this over that. And so all of our choices are based on a foundation. And so that foundation determines our choices. Okay. Now,
Yes.
and this is the argument, and it's an incredibly powerful argument, except for the fact that I have the experience of choosing.
Yes.
And in that experience, right, I can determine what values I am going to privilege over another.
Yes.
I can choose. And Ayn Rand, the way she puts it is like, I don't get to choose whether like the existence of A or B.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to choose it. The one thing I get to choose is, do I be conscious and consider my choices in the larger context of my values or not?
Mm-hmm.
Do I, in this spiritual development spectrum from being unconscious to ultimately conscious or maximally conscious, do I turn on my choice to be conscious or do I not turn it on? That's the fundamental choice that we have.
Yes.
Right? We don't get to choose like ultimate free will. It's not, sometimes it's called libertarian free will. That's not what it's about. It's, do we choose to engage our consciousness in our choices in the context of our deepest understanding of our values?
Yep.
Do we use our consciousness to actually clarify our hierarchy of values and what that is? Are we conscious and intentional? Or are we not? And we could say that that's the spiritual spectrum. And spiritual development is about developing the skill of becoming increasingly conscious and remembering that we have choice, remembering that we are choosers, that we can direct and focus our attention, and we can invest our energy.
To think or not to think?
That's the question.
Ayn Rand talked about that as our fundamental choice, and then comes what to think about.
And how you think about it.
Then comes, what do I do about it if I think about it? Or not?
Yes. And again, to give the determinists their due, once I choose to think, I'm going to think based on all of my previous knowledge. Right? So in that sense, it's determined. Right? Except there's this creativity thing where I bring these things together according to and the one thing I can do is choose to engage. That's the one place I have free will. Right? And
go ahead.
Remembering that, choosing to take that stance of choice, understanding myself to be that which chooses,
Mm-hmm.
the chooser, right?
Yes.
As one of our famous presidents said, I am the decider, right? I am that which has the possibility of choice and can engage it. And to the degree that we do that, we are increasing our spiritual development. The goal of spiritual development in that sense is to be increasingly conscious about how we direct and focus our attention, how we invest our energy, right? And that is the I. And we must remember, or to the degree, the more that we remember that that's who and what we are. That is the I that we are, the chooser.
Yeah.
That is, and the metaphor I use is that's the axis mundi, right?
Mm-hmm.
In geometry, you end up with 0, 0, 0. 0 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis, 0 on the z-axis. That's the center. If you, to the degree that you remember that that's who you are,
Mm-hmm.
which is the goal of spiritual development,
and reside in that place as much of my life as I possibly can.
yes, the more.
To recognize and intentionally keep myself there and pull myself back there when things divert me and live from that place, then I maximize my knowledge and awareness, my perception of reality. Even be able to choose to see, all of this thinking is based on past experience, and that's very limited. So I'm going to sit here and watch all those thoughts based on past experience pass in front of me, and then look outward and go, what else is there?
Yes.
To deliberately, to seek to prove where my current thinking is wrong. That's a scientific principle, scientific method principle that I think is very powerful. So I'm in that place. I am not conscious. Consciousness is who I am.
Yes.
I've heard it said in some spiritual traditions, I is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I is all I am. And so that I is awareness. And then part of awareness and part of this is kind of miraculous in a way, because I still am not clear exactly how this light got turned on, how this bunch of stardust came together in a way that suddenly a light turned on that could experience stardust. I mean, I don't know how that happened. It's remarkable. And the fact that the light got turned on with the ability to direct the light and the ability and some energy of force to direct, to
attention
follow
and energy.
My attention. I mean, all of that seems to be part of the I who I am. Consciousness, ability to direct the consciousness, and then put this life force I have forth toward what I am paying attention to if I choose. So how all that gets parsed out, I'm not quite sure. But it all is built into one thing, I. Okay? And I think that directing is the choice, right? Here I am, light turned on. Now my light can point anywhere. Where do I want to point it? Or am I going to choose to point it? And then where do I want to point it?
Am I going to choose to point it? And then where? Okay, so
where? And then once I see it, then I've got this stuff in me that allows me to put effort and force toward whatever I'm choosing to look at.
Towards whatever I'm choosing to look at. And pause that for a moment, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the money shot.
Yes.
This is the money shot. Like, we're setting up the context. As always, it's like, okay, so here we are. And to the degree that we remember that we are the I, to the degree that that is our axis mundi, the more we do that, the better.
And simply say, spirituality is everything I do to make sure that I understand and reside at the axis mundi throughout my life.
Amen. Okay, so the spiritual practice is designed to increase our capacity to do that.
Yes.
Everything in service of that is spirituality, which pretty much includes everything. Right? We might be doing it intelligently or unintelligently. We might be like building lacunae and going off on tangents and down things which are dead ends. But it all, you could say, comes back to this that which is done to deepen our capacity to stay at choice, to remember who and what we are, the axis mundi, is spirituality. And the more successful we are, the more we reside in that.
And there's a lot of stuff called spirituality whose purpose isn't that. And so I would suggest that other stuff is something else.
Yes. Again, Ken Wilber calls it the pre-trans fallacy. He says that there's pre-rational thinking. It's magic. The child that goes, Mommy, would you turn my food into ice cream so it'll taste better? Like, they don't understand the laws of physics. And it's pre-rational. And then there's rational. And then there's trans-rational. You could say the things we're talking about are trans-rational.
Yes.
We're talking about consciousness and the nature of consciousness. And that's subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're careful with your terminology, it can sound like magic.
Yeah.
It's not magic.
Yeah.
It's not magic, but it can sound like it. It's easy to get confused. The pre-rational and the trans-rational can both get confused or conflated because they take a different language game than rationality.
Mm-hmm.
And 90% of the stuff called spiritual is pre-rational.
Yes.
90% of it is magical myth, not transcendent myth, but magical myth. Okay, great. But the stuff we're talking about is like, it's a refined rationality. There's no magic here.
Rationality sets the root of everything else I think and do as a human being. It's the taproot.
It can.
Well, if spirituality, true spirituality, is intended to set that root. Now, it may or may not be, whatever the practices may or may not be effective at it, or it may even connect me to the wrong root. I don't know. That's a different line of conversation. But I guess what I would say is, so here we sit at the axis mundi, Mark Michael Lewis.
Sir.
What's next?
Yes. Okay. So with that, to the degree that we are there, we make better choices about how we direct our attention and invest our energy.
And we have access to many more options toward which we can direct it.
Right. Clear example of that. If you go into a store and you're looking to buy one thing, you go into the store and you ignore but if you go into the store and you're like, what's available? It's a different mindset. Similar metaphor.
Or I could walk into a warehouse with the lights turned off and a flashlight. And I can point my flashlight at something like we usually do, and the first thing I pointed at, I can think that's all there is in here. And then act accordingly. Or I can recognize that my flashlight is pointed, and I'm pointing it based on my limited past experience, and recognize there's probably a whole bunch of other stuff in here. So what if I start moving my flashlight around and allow this much larger field of possibility?
Excellent. So to the degree that we are at choice, then we remember that we're not just, the world is not just what I see currently with my flashlight.
Yes.
That it's much larger. And so I bring my attention back to, how do I look at the larger picture?
Yes.
Because some ways of directing my attention and investing my energy are better than others. They lead to a more beautiful, loving experience where we are relishing
being alive.
Being alive. Yes. We are celebrating. We are we're glorifying and we're in glory and beauty and love and compassion and generosity and wonder and awe.
Yes. And what you're saying is really important, because what I want, what any of us want, if we really look at all of our behaviors, even as crazy as the outward appearance may seem, we all want to feel that. We all want to relish our experience of being alive. We want to enjoy it, have it be fun, be rich, be energizing. We call that joy. And as a consequence, we get to experience that. We let ourselves experience that when the place we're pointing our flashlight lines up with a decision we've pre-made that that's good for me or not. Mm-hmm. And so only when I point my flashlight on something that matches that predetermination based on my past experience, I want this, I don't want it, then I get to have a moment of that joy. And we end up calling that an emotion happiness, but I don't think it's an emotion happiness. I think it's a state of me being open to experience who I am and what's in me. Mm-hmm. So I can either limit that to only those times that reality, the part of reality I'm experiencing matches this little template I've set up inside, or I can decide that I can let go of those wants and preferences based on past experience and want everything that I'm experiencing. I can decide, instead of just being happy because I get what I want, what if I let myself want my life experience and then I get to feel happy all the time? Mm-hmm. I'm not constraining my joy by letting it open up only in very specific circumstances. Mm-hmm. But instead, I'm opening myself up to everything that happens as part of my experience of life, and I make a decision to enjoy it as fully as I can.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And this is where the multiple levels come in. Now, I'm fond of holding up a pen like this, and saying, "What is it?" And someone can say it's a pen, and I'd say, "Yes, it's a pen." I'd say, "What else is it?" Someone might say it's orange, or it's a cylinder, or it's plastic, or it's under a pound. Right? All of which are correct answers, and all of which examine different dimensions of this thing. Mm-hmm. Right? And so we're looking for, well, so what's better? And one of the dimensions of, okay, if let's say I'm going to live a rationally spiritual life, right? In which case, from a rational perspective, I can say, well, if I have a goal and I achieve that goal, I get to experience joy. And if I continually experience that kind of joy, I'm going to call that happiness, right? And in which case, and I got this from a variation of Peikoff, right? That happiness is joy over time, right? That you experience joy when any particular, right? So you could say from a rational perspective, one way of determining when to experience joy is I have a goal, I achieve the goal, joy. So that's one way.
Okay. Or just circumstances unfold in a way that matches a previously positive experience. So I think, oh, this is good. Now I feel joy.
I have some limited thing that if that happens
outside there,
I experience joy.
Out there.
Joy. So Gregory Bateson, the great cyberneticist.
Yes.
Right. He wrote a book called Steps to an Ecology of Mind. And in it, among other times, he has conversations with his young daughter as she's growing up. And they're profound conversations. And one of them is that she's in her room and she's all, "Daddy, how come my room is always messy?" He's all, "Well, what do you mean? It's messy." She's all, "Well, like, look, things aren't in their right place." He's all, "Oh, their right place? Like this doll. Yes, it's supposed to be right there on the shelf." "Oh, so if it's over here, is that?" "No, that's not the right place." He's all, "What if it's over here?" "No, that's not the right place." "What if it's over here?" "No, it's not the place." He says, I think I know why it's always messy. It's because there's only one way for it to be right, but there's an infinite number of ways for it to be wrong.
Oh my God. And yes, what a how shall I say? What a number to run on myself, that I will be happy if certain things are a certain way.
And only if
certain things, usually outside me, end up a certain way or are a certain way, and there are only a very small number of cases where it will fit one of those, and there are an infinite number of cases where it won't. And I've basically made a choice that I am only going to feel joy in some very limited circumstances. And not only that, but all the rest of the time, I'm going to feel some mix of fear or anger or guilt or shame or resentment because it ain't that way.
Yes, yes. So, from a rational perspective, we can look at it and say one way of determining how to feel is I only feel joy if and only if X condition is met and Y condition is met and Z condition is met, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tony Robbins lays this out explicitly in his Date with Destiny.
Yeah.
Right? He says most people have their life set up so that they only experience positive emotions if X and Y and Z happen and A and B and C don't happen.
Right.
If all of those conditions are met, then I'll experience joy. But otherwise, no. That's
No way.
one way of living. Then there's another way of living.
Yes.
Which is, and I'm going to put it in my the way my father might put it. Holy shit, I'm above ground. Yes.
Yes.
Like almost any condition that's good for joy.
Yes.
If this or that happens.
Yes.
And part of spiritual development is to recognize that if you accept the world as it is.
Yes.
Right? In my training, it's if you make it right.
Yes. Yes.
Right? If you say, okay, the world is the way that it is, and I'm going to say that that's right.
Yes.
Then I can experience joy and love and wonder and awe all the time. Now and from a rational perspective, we can compare. Okay,
yeah.
Well, do I experience joy if and only if X, Y, and Z happen and A, B, and C don't happen? In which case, I rarely experience it. Or I experience joy all the time. Which one of those is a more rational choice?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to vote more joy.
Yeah.
As long as...
Mm-hmm.
As long as the other dimensions aren't sacrificed. For example, if it's I'm going to experience everything is good, and therefore watching my child get raped is fine.
Right. Exactly.
Right? No, that's not what we're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Well, and the thing of it is, okay, so I can either be happy when I get what I want, or I can decide, I can either be happy when reality is the way I want, or I can decide to want reality the way it is and be happy all the time. Now, that doesn't mean I don't deal with reality. That doesn't mean I don't deal with the things that happen in front of me. That doesn't mean I don't make decisions or choices or have values. It just means that I recognize that all of those are just something I have now based on what's in my past, and I act on that in the face of things happening around me, recognizing that I may see, experience, and learn new things that may have me change those goals and values and purposes. So accepting things as they are and feeling joy about it all does not mean that I don't, in the short term, choose some things and move toward those things. It just means that I recognize if reality ends up otherwise, that reality is right and whatever it was I thought was wrong. So how can I now integrate this new information and redirect?
Excellent. Because I think that on the one hand, again, one dimension of the pen, in one dimension of this question of how to live, part of it is, well, why not feel joy at reality as it is, given that it is that way? Right? Given that reality is the way that it is, you might as well enjoy it the way that it is, rather than saying, well, it doesn't match my preconceived notion of how it's supposed to be, therefore there's something wrong. Right? Again, guys, thanks, Dr. Friend of mine, we say, it's like, okay, there's reality, how it is in all of its totality. Its infinite depth. And then there's my idea of how I think it should be. Right?
Which isn't a terrible thing as long as I recognize its limitations.
It's so small and partial compared to the depth of reality. And when those things are out of sync, reality and all of its depth and my idea, when those are different, I make reality wrong.
Yes.
rather than saying, maybe I should change my perspective. Okay, great. So on the one hand, from one dimension, that is obviously a better way of living. It's obviously a better way of living to enjoy reality as it is rather than to limit your joy. Okay. But on the other hand, like, I want some things better than others. Like you said, it doesn't stop you from making choices. Why doesn't it stop you from making choices? You have to explain this to me. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Wait a minute. If I'm feeling joy, why would I care? Like, that's the question that I think has to be answered. And it's a difficult question. It's not that it can't be answered. Obviously can be answered. We're talking about rational spirituality. We think we've got the freaking answer. But well, if you're joyous, why do anything?
That's why what I want to point out is that joy or even happiness is not an emotion like the other emotions. Joy and happiness is me just being able to access the full power and energy and light that I am, that's within me. And things may happen that may threaten my physical well-being. Someone I love, something may be happening that I consider entirely unjust in the world of humanity. And I can feel whatever I feel about those things. However, and then choose to take action at that time. However, I will take those actions better if I am in joy of living, because I will be in a better place to see, to think, to choose, and to function with whatever is going on around me. An achieved goal, a frustrated goal, a violation of a fundamental principle of being a human being, being a human being in the world. Those are all still parts of my experience as a human being. That's the qua man part, right? So yeah, I want to experience fully this being alive in reality as all of who I am and all that's real. And part of that is setting goals and making choices and trying to build things and learning new things and fighting against things that seem to be out of place. I just have to recognize the limitations and the distinction between me here doing these things now as best I can, while continually allowing for what unfolds around me that I hadn't anticipated, couldn't see before, to be my arbiter or guide as I continue to make choices and deal with reality that's in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So, and this is where clarifying that these are actually different dimensions gives us a tremendous amount of power.
Yes. Yes.
Because on the one hand, what you're calling joy or happiness, which I'm willing to accept, and especially for the purposes of this conversation, use in the way that you are speaking, which is that joy and happiness in this sense is the recognition that life is happening and I can either hate it or love it. I'm either a yes to it or I'm a no to it.
Or I equate it with life force. The force of life that's in me. It's when I
aligned. Okay, so let me ask you. So there's a life force.
Yes.
I can either be aligned with it and in its flow, or I can be misaligned with it and fighting it. Is that?
Or I can open up the pipeline to its flow, or I can be blocking it up with fighting this feeling, that thought, that thing in reality. And I end up, one way I've heard it said is, if the flow of life force is the full intense brilliance of the sun, all of my various thoughts, struggles, likes, dislikes, preferences, and judgments are clouds in the sky. And so if I hang on to those clouds, if I struggle, if I fight, I'm holding on to the blockage of that flow. If I can simply allow all those things to unfold around me, to emerge within me, to let them flow and go their natural course, I open the skies up again to allow that life force. What I want is the life force, because from it comes not only the joy of experiencing life, but it also comes all the power I need to engage in life.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to offer a slightly different metaphor that I think points to the same thing, and I want to see if we're aligned.
Okay.
So I like the idea of bandwidth. So I've got a computer, it's got a certain amount of RAM. I've got an internet connection, it's got a certain amount of bandwidth. However you want to think about it.
Yep.
That there's an amount which is possible to be utilized towards an end.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
To the degree that I am saying, reality, you do not match my preconceived notions. And I've got judgments, and I'm pissed off, and I'm fearful, and I'm angry, and I'm right. I am taking up my bandwidth. All of the RAM that could be used to create beautiful graphics and creativity is being taken up.
Struggling with reality.
Yes. Right. And so the amount that's left for me to actually create with is completely taken up. And plus, again, if I think about it like a computer, my screen is taken up with things that are trying to grab my attention.
Yep.
It's like imagine that I've got, again, the metaphor I like to play with. I've got Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and Locals and like all and LinkedIn and all of the social media networks are up on my one big screen.
Yep.
And all of them are sending notifications at me.
Yep. Well, think about this. Think about this. If my mind, right, it's not all I am. I have emotional mechanisms inside me. I have this life force in me. I have consciousness who is who I am that I can direct. But my mind is this computer. It's this powerful, amazing personal computer. And what I get when I get it is a powerful machine with RAM and memory and an operating system. And that's all. Assuming I wipe all the junk off the computer when I buy it. I get an operating system. Now, after a while, it accumulates adware and softwares and new versions and old versions and viruses. And they all begin to get piled up in there. And after a while, it just runs on itself. And I no longer, things don't work. I can't do the things I want to do. It shuts down. It crashes. Mm-hmm. That is my mind left to its own devices. And it's not bad. It's like it's unavoidable as a human being born and growing up and having all of these experiences go in there and imprint on that computer. But I come to a point where I begin to realize this thing is running. And it's running me, and it's not really helping me all the time. And so can I, and this is the hard work that most people never get to, can I recognize it's just a computer? And I'm at the keyboard, and I have the tools to step back and go, oh, well, I'm going to scan those viruses, get rid of those, get rid of the adware. I'm going to clean out things I don't use anymore, simplify my computer, and now I can actually decide what to think about and what to think about the things I'm thinking about. And
now I have this beautiful machine.
Yes, that can create things. But I can't create anything if it's self-running.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great.
But I've got it, yes.
So in that sense, joy or happiness in the way you're describing it is
open bandwidth.
It's the ability to recognize that you've got a computer which is caught up in stuff.
Yep.
And if you listen to, like, again, in the metaphor I like to use, it's like I can shut down the various programs and I can ignore the notifications.
Mm-hmm.
They might still beep at me because I've got habits. They beep at me, but when it beeps at me, I go, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Not playing that game. That's not the thing. I'm going to keep my attention open to what's possible. And this is, again, once we've established this, then it gets increasingly complex and subtle. But let me take it one more level.
Okay, good.
So, on the one hand, I can say yes to existence as it is and experience the joy and happiness of loving reality as it is, rather than only loving it when it fits my preconceived ideals. And in the process, I free up bandwidth. I free up processing power. I free up awareness such that I can now go into the warehouse and look
Yes.
all over and be open to a much larger experience. So I'm feeling joy, and within that, I'm now in a better position to
Yes.
choose, well, how do I want to treat this person?
Yes. Yes.
What choice do I want to make with my finances?
Yes.
What do I want to do in this project?
Yes.
How do I want to approach this issue? What goals do I want to pursue? All of those individual projects,
Yes.
to the degree that I'm open to the universe, that I'm opening to the power of saying universe, yes, to the degree that I'm doing that, then I have the capacity to make better choices in all of those areas.
Yes. I have access to all my capabilities. I have access to as wide a field of knowledge as possible, of information as possible, to bring to that, and as unbiased a choice maker as possible with which to respond to whatever it is. So, for example, somebody does me wrong in some way, clearly in a way that's not an appropriate action, and it causes harm to me, or it might cause me harm. And so immediately my thoughts are going, oh my God, stuff like this has happened again. This is terrible. It can't happen. This person is bad person, bad. And all of these emotions of anger and resentment and fear come up. And so that happens automatically. We can't avoid that. But if I am just in that, then what I do is I react to that person out of that. You know, Einstein talked about never solving a problem at the same level of thinking that created it, right? However, if I can say, oh, look, you know, I'm feeling a bunch of anger and a bunch of fear, and this person did some stuff, and I'm just going to take a breath and let all that kind of go by. All of these thoughts of it look like what Daddy did to me when I was a kid, and instead I'm going to just now look and see, well, what is this person doing, and who are they, and what are my options, and how to act, and take the best possible action that I can envision in response, which is responding at a higher level of thinking than what created the problem. I can't get to that until I become aware of I'm reacting automatically based on past experience to the thing that's creating my disturbance, and therefore it's setting the terms of my action and my options and my choices. I have to see that, step back, and decide, well, I can go here or here or here or here. What am I going to do? And then I get the most effective response and best results to whatever's going on, even though I'm still feeling all that stuff. I can be in joy, and this is the thing I was going to say, feeling anger, feeling fear, guilt, shame, any of those other things, having all kinds of weird conflicting thoughts going on in my head, that can all happen, and I can still be in joy of living. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in joy of living, that means I'm in this place in my center, realizing I'm in reality, I'm glorying in it, and I'm feeling anger, pain, struggle, all this stuff going on. I'm like, okay, but it's not ruling me. Mm-hmm. I'm in a position to respond, not react, which is a cliche, but I mean, it's very
But that's responsibility is the ability to respond versus reacting. That's like this spiritual spectrum that we're talking about is the spectrum from reacting to responding.
Yes.
Responding according to what? Responding according to your own highest values. So when you're open to the world, when you're responding rather than reacting, when something happens, right? Someone goes, rah, 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 and they give you some self-righteous tone, right? Like, I know my normal reaction to that is, well, rah, 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 to you, and rah, 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 and rah, rah. That's my unconscious, natural reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I can notice that to the degree that I'm at the axis mundi, to the degree that I remember that I'm at choice, that I'm at the I, then I go, oh, I'm having this experience of being self-righteously pissed off that this person is being self-righteous towards me. This person is judging me inappropriately. And I'm feeling that.
That chatter.
That is, and to the degree that I'm at the axis mundi, to the degree that I'm developing spiritually and I've got a spiritual base, then I will notice that reaction as part of my experience and my experience. Yeah. But that doesn't dictate how I'm going to act. That's just one more thing that I feel. Like, feeling don't determine reality. Feelings are just part of reality. But to the degree I can recognize that, then I can stay at choice and look at all of the choices available as best I understand them and make the most effective choice. So I become more effective, more powerful, more capable to the degree that I am open to the universe rather than closed to it, to the degree that I'm feeling joy in this sense. Rather than like, and then okay, now. Agreed. And yes. Now, right? There's this question. So what's better? Like once you can actually look at everything and you say you're more effective and more capable, more effective at what? Capable at what? And you can say, what is a better choice? How do you choose to do X rather than Y based on what? That's a different dimension than whether or not you're a yes to the universe so that your mind is available, so that you stay at choice such that your experiences are only experiences rather than dictate yourself. The question is then, okay, so once you remember that.
Here I sit, now what?
Yeah, what criteria do you use to choose? Now, when we spoke about this in the last time, we came to a couple things. One is, well, you definitely have a sense, to the degree that you've thought about it, to the degree that you've sat back at this point to look through choices and say, well, which one leads to a better experience of life? Which one has me relish life more, enjoy it more, be open to it, feel alive and vibrant and loving and caring and embracing life? Some choices lead to more of that. Some choices lead to less of that. Okay.
Well, and then there's choices with regard to how do I increase my capacities, capabilities, knowledge, and skill at living? Okay, then those are choices. I call those capital investments, because then I'm actually spending my attention and energy on becoming more capable, which will allow me to live even more and better.
Yes.
So sometimes I'm just spending it to enjoy an experience of living that I've chosen, and sometimes I'm spending it to increase my capacity to live well, which is a different dimension of choice.
Yes, a different dimension. So one of the things that when you are at choice, when you are at your center, when you are acting from the I in this increasingly spiritualized way, one of the things that you do is you invest your attention and your energy into things that increase your capacity to achieve your values in the future.
Yes.
Right? Other times, or another dimension, is that you act and you invest your attention and your energy in such a way that your moment by moment experience is, my favorite word is epic. Like delicious, fantastic, outrageous, yes, like a very high, I like to say, like, my goal is to have my clients have a higher quantity of higher quality experiences, right? I want higher quality experiences. Now, ideally, I like to say, assuming that increasing your skills is one dimension, increasing your pleasure is another dimension, increasing your sense of purpose and meaning is a third dimension. I want all three. Ideally, I want to make a choice that feels great in the moment, increases my skills and capacities, and gives me a deeper sense of meaning and purpose and connectedness in life. Now, I can choose, well, am I going to increase my skills, or am I going to enjoy myself? Am I going to increase my skills, or am I going to do something meaningful? Am I going to do something meaningful, or am I going to enjoy myself? Fine, but better all three. Better all three. So there is a better that we can move towards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when we're in joy,
yes,
we're more likely to make choices that optimize pleasure and prosperity and purpose.
yes.
Right?
And I can be in joy and feeling anger. I can be in joy and having an intense and gritty, challenging experience. I can be in joy and grieving the loss of someone I love. Because that pleasure axis, I almost thinking of that that's that open life force. I'm enjoying everything about my experience of life.
Okay, great.
And then within that, I pick and choose skills and grow capacity. Spirituality, by the way, is on that axis, increasing capacity. And then there's doing something which are meaningful. All of my various goals and strategies and objectives, all of that fall into the building something or doing something or creating something. But my goal is to operate in a way where I am relishing and that it is an epic experience. That's my preset. That's the place I come from.
Okay, great.
As I do those other things.
Great. Two different paths to take. I'm choosing which one I'm going to take. So, because I think this is the tougher one. One. This gets back to kind of the free will thing. It gets back to the flashlight in the warehouse versus the entire warehouse. It gets back to, well, so this is the best thing that I know thus far.
Right.
But what I know thus far is this much compared to the totality of the universe. And the chance that the thing I'm doing right now is the best possible thing is zero. The Monty Hall problem, for those of you who are familiar with it, means the chance that what I'm doing right now is the right answer is wrong. It's zero. However, it's the best I have.
Yes.
And to the degree that I have really developed my awareness such that I'm responding rather than reacting, such that I'm able to feel my feelings, experience my experience as experiences without letting them dominate me, such that I have some practice feeling my feelings and then going, but what's the best choice? What is it that's going to give me the most prosperity and the most pleasure and the most purpose? What's going to have me approach it with this joyous experience? I call that like a game versus a trial, right? And I say that these four dimensions, right? What do you approach your life as a game or a trial, right? And then are you going for prosperity and pleasure and purpose? Like those four things together are the things I think are key fundamentals. But once I have done that over and over and over, once I have relaxed in the face of life throwing all of its things at me and gone, no, what is deepest? What is going to give me the most goodness? Let's say you've done that for 10, 15, 20 years, really ask that question. And over time, you've gotten, your answer to that question becomes increasingly refined. But now you've got, this is the best way. Like I have a whole set of criteria about what the best thing to do is, but that's only my flashlight right now. That's all.
Yes.
How do I choose when to trust my past intelligent self, right? If you haven't actually gone through and done the work such that you can feel the feelings, such that you can like really consider your larger context. If you haven't done that, don't trust that past self very much.
Yes.
But to the extent you've done that for a while, like you've really thought through your values, you've thought through your choices and the way you handle your relationships, the way you handle your money, the way you handle your body, the way you handle your career and your goals and your emotions and knowledge, like to the degree that you've done that work, how do you differentiate between the best that you've got so far versus the unknown, which is greater than what you could possibly have so far? You still don't know. You're still learning. There's still infinity left to go. How do you choose between the best that you thought before and what you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think about that?
Okay. So I recognize the limitations of what I know, yet that's where I am, and I have to work with it. I mean, I don't have any other choice right now. Right now and next, I have to do something based on what I know because it's all I've got. And I have to recognize the limitations of looking at what I don't know or don't have yet as I project a course of action over a slightly longer period of time. And so I set some goals or targets that require continuous chains of activity, and I engage in that. But I recognize those limitations, but it's all I've got, so I do that now. While doing all that, I recognize that most likely the very best, the very most valuable, the most amazing life experiences for me are out beyond that, some of which I might imagine vaguely, some of which I can't even begin to imagine because some things haven't happened yet or some new information hasn't unfolded in front of me. So I literally try to live in that place of here's where I am and what I'm doing, but I'm continually looking for reasons to see that it's the wrong thing. I'm continually looking at all new information coming in, new choices, and checking with, is this the best in light of all that? I'm looking at the results that get achieved from my efforts. I mean, are things going on that are constantly blocking my objectives and throwing obstacles in my way? Am I finding myself in struggle over trying to get there? Maybe the path I'm on is in conflict with reality. So I look for that information. I welcome it, and then I change as soon as I see any of that, because what I want is the best. And I know by definition, statistically, the best is out there. Mm-hmm. And I have to move forward in a way that allows it to come to me and me to find it. And so it's a way of living. It's not a thing to get or something to achieve or accomplish. That's attaching my success or happiness to something out there. It's learning a mode of living which optimizes the likelihood that I'm going to allow in what's out there that'll leave me in the place that's best for me given who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice.
So it's in the way of living that allows for optimization, mm-hmm. recognizing that I still have to make short-term decisions, choices, and take actions to move into the unknown. But I've got to do it where I'm not attached to my short-term decisions, choices, goals, and actions, but I realize this is a mechanism simply mm-hmm. to carry me out farther into the unknown mm-hmm. and get better answers.
Nice. So I guess it's not new anymore. The new hot thing still, because it's such a hard lesson to get around this very thing. It's like, how do you fully commit to what you're doing without being committed? Right? Without missing out on the opportunities that are in front of you. And in the tech world, we have this idea of the lean startup where you're always available to pivot. You want to make a commitment so that you can bring your minimal viable product to market. Mm-hmm. And for that, you've got to be focused and you got to do the thing and you got to work on it and you have to stay at it until you get to minimal and then you put it out to market and then you allow yourself to be wrong. You're looking for what's next so that you can pivot and figure out where is reality saying yes to me versus where is reality saying no to me. Now,
I'm actually trying to be wrong. I'm trying to find out where I'm wrong.
Yes. And this, you could say, again, comes back to a scientific mindset or a scientific methodology that we use quite often, which is that we build a hypothesis of what we think reality is, how it works. And then we attempt to disprove it.
Yes.
Right? We say, okay, how can I go out and test my hypothesis? How can I create something and discover where I'm wrong? And I'm looking for what's wrong. And there's something about this attitude that you're saying, which is about looking for what's wrong. Now, I like playing with an idea. I'm actually gonna like do a thing. So there's this idea, if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But then there's another idea, which is, but don't be an idiot. Right? If it's not working, try something else. Right? And you've got these two polarities, right? Which, if you think about them, Aristotle has this idea of the golden mean, which is that courage is the golden mean between foolhardiness, right, and willingness to risk, right? Well, okay, and courage is the middle, where you're not foolhardy, but you're willing to risk, right? And I think that unfortunately is an easy way to think about it, but it's completely wrong.
What do they say? Any compromise between two opposites, both opposites lose.
Yes, right. Yes, and Ayn Rand puts it in the starkest terms when she says, in any compromise between good and evil, it is only evil that can win. Yes. Okay, great. So I like to, no, go.
Well, I was going to say, I look at not the mean, not the average, not the middle. I look at the integration of the poles.
So
there's something at any given time that's meaningful and valuable about what's living at both ends. So what's a third way I can do something that takes advantage of the best of each of those in the right situations when they apply?
Yes.
So commitment is simply me engaging right now fully with the best of my ability in a direction with some kind of picture of what's out there. Now, commitment is also a currency I have. That doesn't mean I commit 100% of everything I have to that. That means I choose an amount to commit. And it also doesn't mean I close my eyes while I'm committing. It just means I see something there. I'm moving forward with the best I have to offer, given how much I want to invest in that. And then I'm watching, I'm learning, watching, and also simultaneously committing to invest towards some other things. And then watching all of that is full context, right? Whole context.
Absolutely. I
what's happening in the game all over the board.
Yes. In the idea of the golden mean, right? If it's one spectrum, either you're being foolhardy, right? But if you take it and divide it into two spectrums, on the one hand, the question is, are you being smart or are you being foolhardy? And on the other thing is, are you willing to risk or are you unwilling to risk? Well, what we want to be as smart as possible. On a scale of 1 to 10, between being foolhardy and being smart, we want to be 100% smart.
Yes.
And on the side of being willing to risk intelligently or unwilling to risk, we want to be fully willing to risk.
Yes.
Right?
So if I'm fully willing to risk as smart as I can, there's the answer.
Yes. And so what we're doing is we're integrating. It's not a golden mean at all. It's the golden integration. This is what I call it. I call it the golden integration, which is that whenever you think that you need to compromise, it's because you've collapsed two or more values into one. So you're faced with a false polarity, a false duality. So in this case, on the one hand, like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And on the other hand, don't be an idiot. Right? So, and again, coming back to the scientific mindset, there's this idea that we test our hypotheses. And the great thing about it is we use this thing called statistical significance. Right? We look at our tests and we say, how much data do we need to know whether or not our hypothesis is accurate or not? And we want to do enough effort to determine, can we get the data that we need and do we have enough? Right? So with that, to the degree that we are at Axis Mundi, we can be fully committed to our best understanding of what is best. We set a project in mind, we decide what we're going to do, and we actually do the thing in the face of challenges, but we're open and we're learning to find out when we should pivot.
Yes. I fall back to this sort of wealth model that I like, where I have things I can invest toward things I value in varying degrees. And so I try to match my investment to my value, but recognizing that as I encounter and learn new things, I'm going to reallocate my resources toward the ever-shifting, changing values, goals, and information I have. So, commitment is a resource I have. It's energy, attention, time, money, relationship that I'm putting towards something that I've decided is important, and I'm allocating others elsewhere. But as things unfold and results happen and new information comes to me, I'm like any good investor, I'm reallocating my investments according to where the best potential return is based on what my values are. And I'm even re-looking at and redefining my values in the process.
And the key about that is that if you make an investment and then you're attached to it, then you lose your I-ness. You get caught up in the me-ness. You get caught up in that particular story, and you lose the point of authorship. And then all of a sudden you can't reallocate your portfolio because whatever that is. Okay, cool. So since we're at the end of time.
Yay. The end of time. That's an ominous statement.
Spiritual realization, like the more we live a spiritual life, the deeper we develop our spirituality, the more we stay at this axis mundi of the I, which has us first and foremost say yes to existence and feel joy at all of existence, however it is. We love the world as it is, not as we want it to be. And there are certain ways that we want it to be, that we think are best. And to the degree that we stay at our core, we can most deeply see into what is good for us and then aim for it and be completely committed to that process with the understanding that we're doing it looking for information such that we can refine our path. And all of that is an expression of spiritual awareness and realization. It is the ultimate rationality by being as spiritual as possible. And that's rational spirituality.
So I'd like I'd like to look at this, and maybe we can pick this up later. And this is just rough thinking, but I keep thinking of the metas, right? In philosophy, meta epistemology, meta ethics, so if spirituality is the process of just placing myself in a way of being aware in the midst of everything that I find myself aware of, like bing, the light comes on. Okay, and here I am inside something somewhere, and there's thoughts rolling around, and there's emotions rolling around in here, and there's sensory data coming on in here, and here I am experiencing all of that, and then I got to do something with it. And spirituality is what I do to make sense of that and find my place in it and become the driver of being in the middle of that experience. Then a teleology is built on top of that, where I look at, okay, now that I'm here, where do I drive, and why do I drive there, and how do I know what where and why even means, and how do I compare, and what is value, and how do I deal with all that, values, preferences, goals? What does all that mean? I have to learn that technology of values, teleology. Then I think of Ludwig von Mises, praxeology. Then how do I take me in this seat of this powerful capability of being human, and with this ability now to choose and understand and manage the process of valuing, how do I go about acting high performance? How do I make action choices, do strategies, recognize, move, build in a way that's effective?
High ROI.
Yes. So, but it's in the performance factor, high performing. So spirituality, then we go to teleology. That's where we're playing right now. And then there comes to a point that then now I got to put it into gear and go out there and deal with the guy that's yelling at me and the mortgage that may get foreclosed on, or COVID that just happened and I lost my job. I've got it. Those are all real. And I'm having all the emotions and crazy thoughts in my head about all of it. And at the end of the day, I am in reality. And I am in the process of having engaged in choices and goals. And those things have to be responded to in some way. So now, how do I choose the best possible responses and engage in those actions and engage in life?
Yes. And we're coaches. We work with executives.
Yes, that's what we do.
That's the realm that we're working on. It comes from this deeper teleology, which comes from this deeper spirituality. But like, it's the praxeology. It's the actual, okay, how are you going to weigh your choices? You've got infinity. You're faced with infinity things that you could do right now. What are you going to choose, and how are you going to choose that? That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where all of this cashes out.
Yes, I love praxeology. I've never heard another word for the science of human action, which is broader than economics or politics or any other thing. Ethics sets the stage. Teleology tells us how to value and what that means. Ethics has us coming up with how to choose those values and continue to manage that process. And then praxeology tells us how to act in accordance with those values effectively out in the world.
Amen.
And then
if rationality has to do with ratio and proportion, right? How do you proportion your time, energy, relationships, capital, intelligence? How do you choose how you're going to invest them, given the real world context that you're in, given your goals, given your capacity to stay at spiritual depth, such that as you confront reality, you can stay in touch with your goals and therefore apply it in the real world context that you're in praxeologically.
Yes. And knowing all the while, which may be one of the fundamental principles or axioms of praxeology, that whatever action I choose at the best and from the best of all those places in the face of the reality that's in front of me is most likely not the best action. And then take the action with full commitment and then look for what's the better next action.
Yes. I did the absolute best with what I could, given what I knew, and having done it, like I could now do it better. It was one of my mentors taught me. Okay, fantastic, sir. Becoming an Ayn Rand hero is brought to you by me, the host, Mark Michael Lewis of theprofitabilitycoach.com. If you want to know how to apply these ideas in your life to live a heroic life, go to heroicmeaning.com. where you can play a game where this kind of heroic meaning is the name of the game. And I leave you with a challenge. Make your deepest happiness your highest priority.